Welcome to the Midrash Says Out Loud. This week, we will be learning the Midrash Parasha. Bamidbar. Hope this channel will open your mind to the great teachings of the sages and deepen your connection to the Torah. Remember to like, share and subscribe as we journey through the Midrash each week. Before we begin, we invite you to settle in for the drive, or sit in your comfortable chair and relax as you listen to what the Midrash says out loud. Why the Torah specifies the date and place where Hashem spoke to Moshe. The book of Bamidbar begins, "And Hashem spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai, in the Mishkan, on the first day of the second month, Iyar, in the second year after they had come out of the land of Egypt." Hashem spoke to Moshe hundreds of times, and the Torah does not generally specify the date. Why then does it do so here? The following parable illustrates the point. Mr. XY, a famous millionaire, known to own several skyscrapers, large amounts of stock in major firms and farms and estates in the South, was unable to find contentment in his personal life. He had just divorced his second wife, the daughter of a rich oil magnate, who had embittered his days with her incessant bickering. He had divorced his first wife several years earlier because she had been unfaithful to him. He rarely spoke of these marriages, and when questioned by curious reporters, he refused to divulge any details. He kept the dates of his weddings and divorces a secret, and when asked to display his marriage contracts, he denied possessing any such documents. Many years later, his friends suggested a match for him which, though unusual for a man in his position, would undoubtedly prove auspicious. The girl in question was impoverished but of noble stock and refined character. After the millionaire had investigated and found that all the statements made about the young lady were indeed true, he exclaimed, "This time I have found the right wife. I shall publicly announce the date of the wedding, and I shall certainly give her a marriage contract." After creating mankind, Hashem became, so to speak, disappointed with one generation after another. The generation of the flood rebelled against him, and so did the generation of the dispersion. The Torah therefore glosses over the rise and fall of these and succeeding generations, without revealing the exact dates of their appearance on the stage of history or of their exit. Thus, the Torah does not record when the destructions of the generation of the dispersion or of the Sodomites took place, nor when the 10 plagues and the drowning of the Egyptians occurred. Regarding the Jews, however, Hashem exclaimed, "They are different from the previous generations. They are the children of Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. I know that this people will be loyal to me." Therefore, he told Moshe, "Record in the Torah the exact day, month, year, and locality when I elevated them to greatness." The Torah, Bamidbar, specifies the precise date and place of Hashem's address to Moshe, just as these particulars are found in a kesubah, marriage contract. This pasuk thus demonstrates that the Jewish people were chosen by Hashem from all the nations. Why God revealed the Torah in a wilderness. The words, "in the wilderness of Sinai," indicate that God purposely selected a desert in which to give us his Torah. There are several reasons why God preferred a desert to inhabited land. Among them, had the Torah been given in Eretz Yisrael, its inhabitants would claim a special relationship to the Torah. God spoke to the Jews in a place where everyone enjoyed free access in order to instruct that every Jew has a share and obligation in Torah equal to that of every fellow Jew. By revealing the Torah in the wilderness, God taught us that in order to become great in Torah study, one must make himself like a wilderness that is hefker, ownerless. These words imply, just as a wilderness is free for all to step upon, so a Jew must be humble. Humility is the awareness of one's own smallness. It is a necessary virtue for success in Torah study and for a happy life in this world. Benefits for Torah. To progress in Torah, one must seek the company of Talmidai Hakamim who are wiser than he, and learn from them. A haughty person does not accept advice and guidance from others. Someone who is convinced of his own superiority will not exert himself to fulfill those mitzvos he considers unimportant, nor will invest much effort to satisfy the detailed requirements of others. Hashem is pleased with a humble person, for such a one constantly revises his deeds in order to correct his errors. A conseil ed person, however, is not open to criticism, nor is he self-critical. Therefore, he is far from teshuvah. General benefits of humility. A humble person enjoys life, regardless of his material circumstances. A conceited person is dissatisfied with his lot. The conceited person is convinced that Hashem and his fellow men are indebted to him for his talents, contributions, or merits. If he is not sufficiently rewarded with recognition or money, he suffers from discontentment and frustration. If misfortune befalls a haughty person, he resents it greatly. A humble person, on the other hand, can overcome the troubles, inconveniences, and unpleasant situations of life. A humble person makes friends. A self-admiring person does not. He cannot forgive those who insult him or do not treat him with deference. He will therefore find it difficult to get along with others. Becoming like a wilderness also implies that a Jew must be ready to sacrifice material comfort for Torah. The concept of wilderness suggests the opposite of civilization with its material comforts and luxuries. A Jew can hope for progress in Torah study and fulfillment of mitzvos only if he is prepared to make sacrifices in worldly matters. A further characteristic of the wilderness is its emptiness. A Jew's intellect must be desert-like, free of foreign elements before Torah thoughts can take root in it. A king conquered a new country and annexed it to his kingdom. He desired that its inhabitants submit to his code of law, and therefore announced that he would visit one of the cities in order to be acknowledged as the new regent. However, when the royal chariot arrived, it was not received by the expected cheering crowd. The king traveled through empty streets, and not a soul could be seen. This city was inhabited by prosperous merchants. Some feared that a new ruler would levy taxes. Others were involved in dishonest dealings and feared that the king would put a stop to their frauds, or, even worse, punish them. It was advisable for them to try to evade the authority of the new king. The king realized that the populace of this city was unwilling to acknowledge his rule. He therefore proclaimed that he would visit a different city on the following day. The first day's bizarre spectacle repeated itself. No one was in sight to greet him. The king then realized that the prosperous citizens of the newly conquered territory would not willingly submit to his authority. Rather, he must secure followers among the less fortunate. He repeated his announcements in the vicinities of cities that had been devastated, whose inhabitants had lost their possessions and fortunes. When these destitute people heard of the king's impending arrival, they rejoiced. A regent meant hope for the future. He would invest resources to rebuild their wrecked homes and farms. He would employ them in his service. They had no money which the king might confiscate, nor dealings of which he would disapprove. Thus, on the morrow, a jubilant crowd assembled to welcome the king. Similarly, when the Almighty was seeking a suitable site to reveal his Torah, he approached the Red Sea. However, it fled, as it says in Tehillim, "The sea saw the Almighty and fled." The sea was ashamed to face the Shekinah, for at its edge was the idol Baal Tzfon, which the Egyptians deified. Hashem then considered the mountains as a potential site for giving the Torah, but the mountains skipped away like rams. They fled because they knew that they were unworthy of participating in the revelation, since idolatrous statues had been placed on their summits. Finally, the Shekinah approached the wilderness, and it did not retreat. It could receive the Almighty without fear or shame, for it was totally bare, unblemished by any stain of idol worship. Hence, God chose the wilderness for Matan Torah. This allegory conveys the message that a Jew can acquire Torah wisdom only by first preparing his intellect to receive it. He must eliminate any thoughts, ideals, or desires that are antithetical to Torah. He must make his mind a wilderness. Then the Shekinah is able to enter. The children of Israel are numbered a fourth time. On the 1st of Iyar, the second year, in the wilderness, Hashem commanded Moshe, "Count the Jewish males between the ages of 20 and 60. Only natural Jews were counted, not the Erev Rav. These Egyptian converts had been excluded from all previous countings too. Hashem commanded Moshe, "Assemble the children of Israel and count them by collecting a half-shekel coin from each, since Jews may not be counted directly. Each one shall produce documents and witnesses to prove tribe, from which his father is descended. They calculate the total number of males of each tribe. Thereafter, register each man's name according to his father's descent and calculate the total of the children of Israel. Gigantic. Your brother Aharon shall assist you. Since the task of registering hundreds of thousands of people as Aharon had not been ordered to participate in the last census, just after the Egel to forestall people from remarking, "First he made a golden calf, and now he counts how many people survived the ensuing plague." Hashem continued, "The Nesiim, leaders of the tribes, shall also assist you in the counting." Hashem enumerated the 12 Nesiim, counting Ephraim and Manasseh, as separate tribes. Since he did not appoint a Nasi for the tribe of Levi, Moshe understood that the Leviim were not to be counted. Moshe summoned the Nesiim immediately, and they assembled the children of Israel at the entrance of the Mishkan without delay. On that very day the census was begun. This demonstrates the great eagerness and happiness with which the leaders of the community of Israel fulfilled a mitzvah. Usually, if the census of a population is to be taken, the officials involved first meet to discuss and organize the undertaking. They would certainly be justified in allocating time to plan such an elaborate task. Moshe, Aharon, and the Nesiim, in their zeal to obey Hashem, dispensed with the preliminaries and, with combined efficiency, began the census on that very day. However, it took many days to complete the census of so vast a population. The name and ancestry of each Jew between 20 and 60 were recorded. The population of each tribe was computed, and finally the total number of the children of Israel determined between 20 and 60. This was the fourth time the Jews were counted. Men. Initially, the Torah records that the members of Yaakov's family who traveled to Egypt were 70. The Torah states that men left Egypt. These figures indicate that the Jewish people multiplied miraculously while in Egypt. Due to Hashem's special providence, Yaakov's small family, despite enemy plans to exterminate it, wondrously became a nation comprising millions of souls. After the sin of the golden calf on the 11th of Tishri, the children of Israel were counted a third time. That census was taken as a token of Hashem's love and concern for the Jews, even after their sin. Now, on the 1st of Iyar, almost 7 months after the latest census, the people were counted again. It appears remarkable that this new census yielded the exact total as the previous one, Shemos. Certainly some teenagers must have reached the age of 20 in the meantime, and hadn't any of the elders passed away? How is it possible that after more than a half-a-year interval, there was absolutely no variation in the size of the population? One of the answers is that those men who reached the age of 20 between the two countings were not included in the new census of Iyar, since the census years were reckoned from one Rosh Hashanah to the next. If someone came of age any time after Rosh Hashanah, he would not be included in the current year's census. Therefore, the men who turned 20 between the census of Tishri and this census in Iyar were now excluded. Thus, the official census did not show an increase in the population. Neither did the children of Israel's number decrease during those months, since they were then engaged in constructing the Mishkan. This mitzvah protected them, so that not one Jew passed away during that period. This explains why the results of this census were identical to those of the previous one. Since no changes had occurred since the last counting, why did Hashem order a new census? We will discuss this point in the next section. The aims of this counting and why Bamidbar is termed Homesh HaPekudim, the Book of Numbers. Hashem ordered this census for several reasons. Among them, a major purpose of this counting was to ascertain each individual's ancestry and thus determine his tribe. Hashem commanded that the Jews be numbered on this 1st of Iyar because their entry into Eretz Yisrael was scheduled to take place in 20 days. The 40 years' stay in the wilderness was decreed only afterwards when the people demanded spies. This survey would determine who qualified to serve in the that would conquer Eretz Yisrael army. Although there are many other reasons for this census, one in particular profoundly explains why Hashem ordered the children of Israel counted now, even though they had been counted just a few months earlier. At night, a businessman returned home exhausted. It had been a hectic day, telephone calls, orders, and shipments. He wished only to have a good supper and drop into bed. Nevertheless, he first took time to attend to something. Although time-consuming and requiring concentration, it nevertheless gave him much pleasure. Taking out from his wallet the checks and banknotes which he had collected during the day, he patiently counted them several times. Forgetting his weariness, he was filled with contentment and pleasure. A person invests time and effort to inspect and count objects that are precious to him. The more valuable the item, the more carefully he will scrutinize it. The Almighty frequently counts the community of Israel, demonstrating that in His eyes every individual Jew is important. Therefore, the Torah goes to great lengths to detail the numbers of the Jewish people. In Parshas Bamidbar alone, there are 4 different listings of the numbers of the children of Israel. Hashem says, "Whenever the sum total of the children of Israel is mentioned, I am happy, because it represents the number of soldiers in my army, who fulfill my will in the world." The book of Bamidbar is also called Homesh HaPekudim, the Book of Numbers. It contains a detailed census in this Parsha and another in Parshas Pinkas. The title, Book of Numbers, signals the importance which Hashem attaches to counting the Jewish people, for that act is really an expression of His love for them. Why Aharon's sons are mentioned separately in the Torah. Aharon was ordered to assist in taking the census, which also established the authentic lines of ancestry. Some of the people began to whisper, "Before Aharon decides whether we are kosher Jews, let him examine the lineage of his own grandchildren. Didn't he allow his son Eleazar to marry one of the granddaughters of the idol worshipper Yisro, even before Yisro became a Jew?" In reality, Aharon acted upon Hashem's command. Hashem foresaw that this girl was worthy of giving birth to Pinkas, who would sanctify Hashem's name. In order to reinstate Aharon's honor, Hashem made special mention of Aharon and his sons before the rest of the Levium, saying, "These are the descendants of Aharon and Moshe." This pasuk emphasizes that the Almighty distinguished all of Aharon's descendants without exception. The 3 camps in the wilderness. After Moshe had counted the Jews and classified them according to tribes, Hashem taught him the system of encampment and traveling. The Mishkan was to be placed at the very center of the nation. Its site was called the Camp of the Shekinah. It was the innermost and holiest camp. It was surrounded on all 4 sides by the Levium. The area where they encamped was known as Machane Leviah, the Levite camp. This camp was less holy than that of the Shekinah. It was encircled by a 3rd camp, the Machane Yisrael camp of the children of Israel, that contained all 12 tribes, 3 of which camped in each direction. The camp of the children of Israel was enclosed by the clouds of glory. The Erev Rav remained outside the clouds at all times. The sketch indicates the positions of the 3 camps, a description of the Levite camp. The Kohanim and Leviim were stationed in all 4 directions around the Mishkan as its honor guards. They also maintained a constant watch so that no non-Kohen would enter to perform an act of service forbidden to him. Hashem gave Moshe detailed instructions as to where the Levite families should camp. In the east, Hashem commanded, "Moshe, Aharon, and Aharon's sons shall camp in the east, near the entrance of the Mishkan." East is the direction of the rising sun, the direction of light. Moshe and Aharon with his sons deserve to be placed there as a reward for the spiritual light which they disseminate with their Torah and mitzvos. West of the Mishkan, only Moshe and Aharon with his sons camped directly next to the Mishkan. The other Levite families, Gershon, Kehat, and Merari, rested at a distance of 1,000 amos from the Mishkan. The place to the west of the Mishkan was reserved for the children of Gershon. From the west come the snow, hail, frost, and heat. The children of Gershon possessed the spiritual power to shield the community of Israel from these natural forces, south of the Mishkan. In the south, at a distance of 1,000 amos from the Mishkan, camped the children of Kehat. Rains of blessing emanate from the south. The children of Kehat carried the Aron, which symbolizes the Torah. Their encampment in the south indicated that Hashem grants the community of Israel rain in proportion to their diligence in Torah study. If Jews cease to study Torah, rain is withheld. north of the Mishkan. The children of Merari camped on the northern side of the Mishkan, at a distance of 1,000 amos. The north, in the language of our sages, represents the direction from which Hashem sends tribulations and punishments upon the world. The wooden boards of the Mishkan, which this family carried, served as a reminder that Hashem would punish those who deviate from his ways with a wooden rod. The camp of the children of Israel. Hashem commanded that the tribes camp in the four main directions in order to symbolize that the merits of the community of Israel sustain the entire world. In the east, Yehuda, Hashem said, Yehuda, the tribe, from which the Jewish monarchs will descend, shall camp in the east. The east is the direction of the rising sun, and the Jewish monarchy is termed a light. Its task is to guide the nation by the light of Torah. Yehuda, therefore, belongs in the east. Yissachar too pertains to the east, the direction of light. The tribe of Yissachar consisted of Torah scholars, mankind's beacon of hope throughout the ages of spiritual darkness and confusion. O Zebulun, that tribe was stationed in the east, the direction of light, because the riches acquired through its commerce served the light of Torah. The members of Zebulun used their wealth to support the Torah scholars of Yissachar. Tzaddik is fortunate, and so is his neighbor. The members of the three tribes that encamped in the vicinity of Moshe and Aharon on the east side became Torah luminaries. The tribe of Yehuda distinguished itself in Torah study and mitzvos. Yissachar was famed for its Torah students, who were well-versed in the knowledge of intercalating the months and the years. Zebulun, in addition to supporting Yissachar, boasted its own great Torah scholars. Conversely, woe to the Rasha and woe to his neighbor. The tribes of Reuven, Shimon, and Gad were stationed next to Kehat. Therefore, members of Reuven, Dasan, Aviram, and On ben Peles joined the rebel Korach from the family of Kehat. Members of Shimon and Gad, on other occasions, caused Machleket strife. This midrash teaches that we should carefully select our neighbors and associates. Neighbors and friends exert much influence on a person. Being in the wrong company will weaken one's commitment to Torah. Gain a Torah perspective on all aspects of life. Order 2 in the south. Reuven, dew and rains of blessing emanate from the south. After sinning in the incident involving Bilhah, Reuven confessed his error and repented. Reuven, the first great Baal Teshuvah, implanted the potential for Teshuvah in his descendants. This tribe's position in the south, the source of blessed rains, indicated that blessings come to the world in the merit of Teshuvah. Gad was placed next to Reuven because the tribe of Gad, whose members were warriors, had the spiritual power to evoke the divine radiance of strength upon the community of Israel. This quality complemented the divine quality of mercy evoked by the tribe of Reuven. Shimon was positioned between the above two tribes for his own spiritual protection. Shimon had received no explicit blessing from his father Yaakov, who was angry that Shimon had taken the initiative in destroying Shechem and in selling Yosef. Moshe also chose not to bestow upon this tribe a separate blessing, because he was angry that its members had participated in the sin of Shittim. Because Shimon was bereft of blessings, Hashem stationed his tribe where it would benefit from its neighbors' spiritual powers, which called forth divine mercy and strength. In the west, from the west, emanate snow, hail, frost, and heat, powerful forces which cause death and destruction. Hashem ordered that this direction be occupied by the offspring of Rachel, whose spiritual power is sufficient to defeat the forces of evil. Ephraim, Binyamin, and Menashe all possessed special strength to conquer their Yitzray Hara. Consequently, they averted evil decrees threatening the community of Israel. Moreover, the Shekinah rests in the west. Therefore, Binyamin, Hashem's beloved, who was promised the presence of the Shekinah, was stationed in that direction. In the north, Dan, darkness descends on the world from the north. Dan was placed there to symbolize that this tribe caused a spiritual darkness when King Yerovam set up one of two calves in its territory, Melachim II. Members of the tribe of Dan also worshipped the image of Micha in the days of the judges. Hashem positioned Dan in the north, from which harm comes to the world, to to admonish the tribe to forsake their erroneous ways and choose the path of life instead. Hashem positioned Asher next to Dan, in the hope that their light would spill over to Dan's dark camp. Asher's portion was blessed with olives whose oil was used for the menorah, a symbol of the wisdom which this tribe possessed. Asher was meant to impart its wisdom to Dan. Naphtali was also put next to Dan because it possessed a heavenly radiance of material blessing. Its blessing would spill over to benefit the less deserving tribe of Dan. How were the boundaries of the three major camps and of the individual tribes demarcated? The well of Miriam miraculously issued streams of water, which, and the camp of Levium from the camp of the children of Israel. The streams branched out into rivulets which divided the grounds of one tribe from the next. However, between the camps of Yosef's sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, there was no dividing rivulet. When Moshe heard from Hashem that each tribe was assigned a certain boundary, he thought, "Now I have to contend with the complainers in each tribe. Tribesmen of Reuven will tell me, we would prefer to be stationed in the north, and men of Dan will request the south. I must be prepared for a series of arguments." "Your fears are unfounded, Moshe," Hashem assuaged him. "The Jews know where they shall camp. Their forefathers transmitted to them Yaakov's last words, that they would occupy the same positions that Yaakov's sons did when bearing their father's coffin. Before his death, Yaakov had commanded his sons, Yehuda, Yissachar, and Zebulun shall carry my coffin from the east, Reuven, Shimon, and Gad from the south, Ephraim, Binyamin, and Manasseh from the west, and Dan, Asher, and Naphtali from the north. Yosef and Levi are exempted from this duty. Yosef, because he is a king, and it is undignified for a king to carry a bier, and Levi, because his tribe will in the future bear the ark of Hashem. It is not proper for one who carries the ark of the eternal living God to bear the ark of a deceased person. Hashem retained Yaakov's original arrangement. The meaning of the Degalim, standards. The Degalim, which set off the various encampments in the wilderness, were of profound spiritual significance, and are not to be confused with today's familiar royal or national banners. In fact, the nations of the world copied the idea of national banners from the Jews. However, their flags are but poor imitations of the Degalim, which were designed and displayed entirely by heavenly direction. The children of Israel prophetically envisioned the Degalim at Matan Torah. They perceived the Shekinah descending upon Har Sinai accompanied by chariots of angels that were close to the Shekinah, and vast numbers of additional chariots surrounding them. The angels were grouped around the Shekinah as 4 divisions flying different flags. To the right, south, was the angel Michael's division. To the left, north, was the angel Uriel's division. In front, east, was the angel Gabriel's division. In back, west, was the angel Raphael's division. The fiery heavenly banners were perceived by the Jews in varying shades of color. The inspiring sight of the celestial armies caused the children of Israel to exclaim, "If only we were organized under Degalim, with the Shekinah in our midst, just like the angels." Why did they desire Degalim? They yearned to experience the special holiness of being situated like the heavenly army, who enjoyed a higher level of attachment to the Almighty. Hashem informed Moshe then that he would grant the children of Israel's request for Degalim. It was not until 30 days after the Mishkan was established, and the Shekinah, that had departed after the Heit Ha'igel had returned permanently, that Hashem considered the Jews worthy of achieving this superior level of Kedusha. He commanded, Moshe, the Jews shall encamp under 4 leading banners. The 4 divisions led by special Degalim. What were the 4 leading Degalim? In the east was Yehuda's division, Degel Machane Yehuda. Included in Yehuda's Degel were Yissachar Zevulun. In the west was Ephraim's division, Degel Machane Ephraim. Included under his Degel were Manasseh Binyamin. In the south was Reuven's division, Degel Machane Reuven. Included in Reuven's Degel were Shimon Gad. In the north was Dan's division, Degel Machane Dan. Dan's Degel included Asher Naphtali. How were the 4 leading banners distinguished from the rest of the Degalim? They may have been bigger than the other 8. Besides emblems, which were embroidered upon all the flags, these 4 bore inscriptions. The following letters were embroidered upon them. Yehuda's leading dagel bore the letters X, the initials of the 3 forefathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Reuven's leading dagel contained the letters Webar, the second letter of each forefather's name. Moreover, the letters on Reuven's flag spelled the word We Betza, prophet, a reminder to be honest in monetary dealings, just as Yaakov's son Reuven refrained from theft. On Ephraim's leading dagel was inscribed PM, the third letter of each forefather's name. PNB means to distance oneself, hinting that a Jew must remove himself from idolatry. The warning was posted on Ephraim's flag because King Yerovam, who descended from this tribe, introduced images into the Jewish kingdom. Dan's leading dagel contained the last letter of each forefather's name. These letters also spell the word makav, hammer, to signify that a Jew is obligated to destroy idols. It was an appropriate warning for the tribe of Dan, which did not protest when King Yerovam set up an image in its territory. We notice that the letter Hai of Abraham's name, which is the letter taken from Hashem's name, was not represented on any of these 4 degalim. Instead, the cloud of glory that enveloped the Aaron and traveled ahead of the children of Israel assumed the shape of the letter Hai, representing Hashem's name. The Jews would gaze at the high-shaped cloud to know whether to travel or rest. When it traveled, they traveled. When it rested, so did they. How the 4 divisions set out on a journey. When the tribes set out on a journey, they proceeded in formation according to Hashem's specifications. The Almighty instructed Moshe, at the beginning of each journey, Degel Makane Yehuda, Yehuda's division, shall proceed first and travel in front. It shall be followed by the Levite families of Gershon and Merari. Next shall march Reuven's division, followed by the Levite family of Kehat. Then Ephraim's division will go, and finally Dan's. The order of traveling was determined according to a profound divine plan. For example, the division of Dan traveled last because Dan was a strong tribe, able to repel enemies that attacked from the rear. Since its tribesmen were numerous, they recovered articles lost by the other tribes. In addition, Dan's position symbolized that one who separates himself from Avodas Hashem, as did Dan through its tendency toward idolatry, is a loser and thereby relegates himself to the background, the emblems and colors of the 12 degalim. Each dagel was made of silk. Its color matched that of the tribe's precious gem in the Kohen Gadol's breastplate. Each dagel bore an emblem, alluding to the tribe's particular praise or merit. The way diagram shows the colors and designs of the 12 degalim. An explanation of each follows in the text. Reuven, his flag was red. This color indicated that in the merit of Reuven's teshuvah for his sin involving Bilhah, the Almighty will ultimately take revenge on Edom. God is pictured as appearing to Edom in red garments, symbolic of executing justice, Yeshayahu. Reuven's emblem was dudaim plants, translated by some as mandrakes. The emblem was complimentary for Reuven. It symbolized that he picked only wild-growing, ownerless dudaim plants for his mother because he was fearful of stealing. Just as Reuven personally steered clear of thievery, so did his tribe, Shimon. This tribe's flag was green and displayed a picture of the city of Shechem. Reuven, red color; Dudaim Yehuda, blue color; Lion Shimon, green color; city of Shechem Yissachar, black color; sun and moon Gad, black and white color; troops Zebulun, white color; ship Ephraim, black color; Dan, sapphire color; bullock serpent; Binyamin, multicolored; Asher, pearl color; wolf olive tree Menash, black color; Raim, Levi, white, black, red; Urim Vetumim, Naphtali, purple color. Hind, the conquest of Shechem by Shimon, marked the beginning of the conquest of Eretz Yisrael. This emblem thus encouraged the children of Israel, who were about to enter the land. Levi, although Levi had his own dagel, our sages do not include it among the 12 degalim. His emblem was the high priest's breastplate, Choshen Mishpat, which represented that tribe's priestly status. Its colors were 1/3 white, 1/3 black, and 1/3 red. These colors alluded to the tribe's greatness, white hints at the purity of the Levium. They were free from sin both in Egypt and in the wilderness. Black signifies that to outsiders the Levium appeared black as ravens. They had no worldly accomplishments to show, so totally were they engrossed in Torah study. Red was reminiscent of the blood of the sacrifices which the priests offered onto the altar. Yehuda was assigned a Tekailis blue flag on which was embroidered the picture of a lion. Both the color and the emblem proclaimed the tribe's royal status. The color blue is associated with the heavenly throne of glory, and Yehuda was the earthly representative of Hashem's majesty. The picture of a lion portrayed Yaakov's last blessing, in which he compared Yehuda to a lion, the king of beasts. Yissachar's color was black, and his emblem was the sun and moon. Since this tribe was famed for its Torah scholarship, its color was black. See explanation of Levi's Degel. Its emblem, the heavenly bodies, indicated that the members of Yissachar were well versed in astronomy and were therefore able to set the Jewish calendar. Zebulun, his dagel was white and embossed with a ship. Zebulun's portion in Eretz Yisrael was near the seashore. With the profits from his sea voyages, these tribesmen supported the Torah studying tribe of Yissachar. The color white symbolized their happiness and kind motives in conducting their business. They undertook their journeys in the happy conviction that Hashem would grant them success because they used their money for maintaining Torah. Dan, his dagel, was sapphire-colored and bore the picture of a serpent, the image evoked by Yaakov in his blessing to Dan. Both the color and emblem alluded to the judge Shimshon, who would descend from Dan. Strong and firm like a sapphire, Shimshon would attack the Pelishtim in the manner of a snake, as described in Parshas Vayehi, dealing them many severe blows. Gad, his flag, was interwoven from black and white threads. Pictured on it were military troops, in accord with Yaakov's prophecy that mighty warriors would descend from this tribe. The black-white color scheme symbolized that, although the members of his tribe were exposed to constant peril in battle, black, they were nevertheless serene because of their trust in Hashem, white. Naphtali, his dagel was of a reddish-purple hue, resembling the color of diluted wine. His symbol was a hind, to which Yaakov had likened him in his blessing. The reddish-purple color hints at Torah, which is compared to wine. Rows of Torah students from this tribe sat and studied Torah from the mouth of the Sanhedrin. Asher's dagel was pearl-colored, and embroidered on it was the picture of an olive tree. Asher was blessed with beautiful daughters, who married kings and Kohanim Gedolim. His daughters wore pearl necklaces, as do women of noble rank. The olive tree represented Asher's portion in the land, which was blessed with olives. Ephraim, his dagel was black and bore the picture of a bullock, which symbolized Yehoshua, who would descend from this tribe and whose strength was likened to a bullock's. Manasseh, his dagel, also black, showed a ram, a kind of wild ox, alluding to the judge Gidon from the tribe of Manasseh, whose good deeds were likened to the beautiful horns of the ram Binyamin. His dagel combined the colors of all the Degalim and showed a wolf. The altar of the Bais Hamikdash was located in Binyamin's portion. Through the sacrifices that were offered on it, it brought blessing to the entire people, which is suggested by the inclusion of the colors of all the tribes in Binyamin's flag. The picture of the wolf, too, alludes to the sacrifices that were snatched, consumed by the heavenly fire on the altar. The greatness of the Degalim. When the children of Israel assumed their proper positions under the Degalim, the Shekinah descended from among the celestial Degalim to rest upon the Jews. They were thus elevated to new heights of Kedusha as Hashem's army on earth. The Gentile nations who beheld the community of Israel resting under the Degalim were awestruck. They could recognize the Kedusha of a people who lived as an organized unit to serve the Almighty. Sensing that the Jews on earth resembled the heavenly angels, they exclaimed wonderingly, "What nation is this that looks like the dawn, beautiful as the moon, clear as the sun, awe-inspiring under its banner? Shir Hashirim." The memory of the Degalim was never forgotten by our people. For thousands of years thereafter, Whenever a Jew was sorely tempted to compromise his faith in order to gain fame and fortune, he would reply to the persuasions of the Gentiles, "What do you have to offer that can compare to the greatness we once experienced? In the wilderness we rested under the Degalim as Hashem's camp on earth. Your promises are petty and insignificant compared to the Almighty's." Thus, the memory of the glory of the Degalim assisted the Jews in exile to remain loyal to Torah. The Leviim are numbered separately. After Moshe finished counting the tribes, Hashem told him, "Only the tribe of Levi you shall not number among the children of Israel." Upon hearing this, Moshe became afraid. He thought that Hashem did not want Levi's ancestry researched in public because he knew of some flaw in it, and therefore wished to spare its members shame. Hashem immediately quieted his fears by explaining, "Count the Leviim separately. Since they serve in my palace, the sanctuary, they constitute a division apart." What is the meaning of the words? Tzadik katamar yifrak, behatzrot elokainu yafriku. The tzaddik flourishes like a palm tree. He grows like a cedar tree in the Lebanon. Planted in the house of Hashem, they shall flourish in the courtyards of our God. Tehillim? The above verses in our context refer to the members of Levi. When they were asked to donate jewelry for the construction of the golden calf, they all refused, although most men from the other tribes participated. Because the Leviim remained pure, they could later execute the sinners of the community of Israel. The Pasuk therefore likens this tribe to a palm tree, symbolic of the tzaddik. The palm tree produces sweet fruit. A tzaddik produces mitzvos. Because the Leviim acted like palm trees, the Almighty elevated their status to that of cedars. He assigned them positions of honor in the Azara of the Mishkan and Bais Hamikdash, the courtyards of our God. The Leviim had also distinguished themselves in Egypt. They joined none of the Egyptian cults and throughout the Egyptian exile, circumcised their sons. While the community of Israel was brought out of Egypt without fully meriting the redemption, only because Hashem anticipated their future acceptance of the Torah, the tribe of Levi was fully deserving of the redemption. Hashem commanded, "Count the members of this tribe separately to demonstrate that I have found their hearts loyal to me." A further reason Hashem desired that the tribe of Levi be excluded from the census of the other tribes was to prevent the angel of death from ruling over them in the future. After the incident of the spies, Hashem decreed that the men of this generation would die in the wilderness. Had the tribe of Levi been included in the general census, it perforce would have been affected by the decree, for once the destroying angel is released, he has power over all and does not discriminate between tzaddikim and reshaim. Hashem therefore took special precautions to distinguish the Leviim as a separate entity. Thus the angel of death could not touch the Leviim, who subsequently entered Eretz Yisrael. Although in all the other tribes no man younger than 20 was counted in a census, the Leviim were an exception. Hashem told Moshe to count the Levite males from the age of 1 month. Before the age of 1 month, an infant's viability is uncertain. Why were the infants of the Leviim numbered? Even though they were too young to perform any type of avoda, a Levi may not serve before the age of 30. The Almighty bestowed extra reward both upon an infant that was counted in a census and upon his parents. When Hashem told Moshe to determine the number of the male Levite infants from 1 month, Moshe objected, "As a Jewish king and leader, I am commanded to conduct myself with dignity. Is it not contrary to Torah ruling that I enter each family's tent to count the babies?" Hashem replied, "Do your part of the mitzvah, and I shall do mine. Merely stand at the threshold of a Levite tent, and I shall reveal how many of its occupants are to be included in the census." As Moshe approached each tent, the Shekinah preceded him. Standing at its entrance, Moshe heard a heavenly voice proclaim, "In this tent, there are 8 children. In this tent, there are 10 children," and so on. Moshe counted the male members of the 3 Levite families, Gershon, Kehat, and Merari. Then he calculated the total number of Leviim. It was smaller than the total of any other tribe. Why was Levi the fewest in number? One reason is that many who carried the Aron failed to honor it properly and were punished with death at the hands of heaven. The Leviim redeemed the firstborn. Originally, Hashem appointed the firstborn of each household to the office of Kohen, in charge of offering his family's sacrifices. Adam, the firstborn of mankind, offered sacrifices in Gan Eden. The heavenly garments which Hashem made for Adam after he sinned were Bigdai Kehuna. They distinguished him as a priest of Hashem. Adam appointed his son Shaiz as his successor. Although not a firstborn, Shaiz, rather than Cain, took over the service because Cain was disqualified after having murdered Hevel. Shaiz therefore received the heavenly garments. Shaiz in turn transmitted the garments and the priestly office to his son Methuselah, who was a great tzaddik. Methuselah bequeathed them to Noah. It was in these garments that Noah sacrificed to Hashem upon leaving the ark. Noah gave the heavenly garments to his son, Shaim, because he prophetically foresaw that the Jewish people would descend from Shaim. Shaim, who was also called Melchizedek, offered sacrifices to Hashem while wearing these garments. Shaim passed them on to Avraham. Although Avraham was not a firstborn, he received them because he was a tzaddik and worthy of the priesthood. Avraham gave them to Yitzhak. As Yitzhak's firstborn, Esav had the right to offer the sacrifices for the household. Yaakov, however, was aware that Esav's heart was far from Hashem's service and correctly suggested that Esav sell him the birthright so that he could offer the sacrifices instead of the undeserving firstborn. The prominence of the firstborn was further underscored in the days before Matan Torah, when Moshe summoned all the firstborn to bring offerings on the Mizbeach, which he had built at the foot of Har Sinai. However, when the firstborn later sacrificed to the golden calf, they lost their privilege. The Almighty proclaimed, "I have distinguished the firstborn for the sacrificial service, but they misused their positions. Let the Levium, who remained loyal to me, serve in their stead." Hashem commanded Moshe that each firstborn be replaced by a Levi. The Levi redeemed his counterpart, since all firstborn deserved to be killed for worshiping the golden calf. First, Moshe had to count the Levium, as we related in the previous chapter. Then Hashem told him to count all the firstborn males among the children of Israel from the age of 1 month onward. This was a new calculation, conducted specifically for the purpose of substituting Levium for the firstborn. In this census, the Shekinah did not precede Moshe to the tents of the children of Israel to inform him about the number of children inside. Hashem said to Moshe, "Since the Levium sided with me in the Het HaEgel, I participated in their counting. However, the firstborn distanced themselves from me. Therefore, I withdraw from numbering them." Moshe calculated that there were altogether firstborn males in the children of Israel. Compared to the total of Levim, there was a surplus, a firstborn. Hashem commanded Moshe, "Exchange, or in the language of the Torah, redeem, each firstborn for a Levi. The extra Israelite firstborn shall each donate 5 shekel coins, to be divided among Aharon and his sons. By this act, the surplus firstborn will be considered redeemed and released from performing the avodah in the future." Moshe thought, "Any firstborn whom I will tell, pay 5 shekalim, will answer me, 'I am not one of the extra ones. I was so already exchanged for a Levi.'" Moshe therefore devised a plan. He inscribed lots with the word Levi and with 5 shekalim. Each firstborn drew a lot. Whoever selected one marked 5 shekalim was required to pay this amount. The Roman general Hugentin challenged Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, "Your teacher Moshe was either a thief or he did not know arithmetic." "Why do you say so?" Rabbi Yochanan queried. The general elaborated, "Moshe recorded in the Torah that there were altogether Levium. However, if you add the numbers of all the Levite families, you arrive at the sum total of Tas Leviim. The family of Gershon had members Kehat and Merari. Since the Israelite firstborn totaled, there was actually an excess of Leviim. Why then did Moshe tell firstborn to redeem themselves with 5 shekel coins? There are 2 possibilities. Either Moshe erred in his calculation, or else he deliberately misrepresented the total of Levium, so that his brother Aharon should pocket times 5 shekalim. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai answered him, "Your presumption is wrong. I will give you the true answer." Moshe did not include the extra 300 Levium in the total, because these 300 Levium were also the firstborn of their families. One firstborn has no power to redeem another. Consequently, there really was an excess of Israelite firstborn as the Torah records. The general immediately accepted Rabbi Yohanan's explanation and took leave of him. Which acts of service were performed by the Levium? Hashem told Moshe, "Bring the Levium near and present them before Aharon, that they may serve him. They are mine by right, for they serve instead of the firstborn, whom I rescued during the plague of the slaying of the firstborn in Egypt. The Levium are chosen for all eternity. They will serve in the Mishkan and in the Beis Hamikdash." While the Kohanim performed the sacrificial service, receiving and sprinkling the blood and burning the inner organs, the Levium performed other tasks. In the wilderness, they transported the Mishkan and its components and were responsible for guarding the vessels from damage or loss. In the Mishkan and Beis Hamikdash, they sang in a choir, accompanied by musical instruments, while the daily Korban Tamid was offered, as well as on other occasions. They opened and closed all the gates. They guarded the holy vessels from being touched by a non-Kohain. They surrounded the Mishkan and Beis Hamikdash as honor guards at night. Some Levium served as principal treasurers and others as assistant treasurers of the sanctuary funds. Moshe divided the Kohanim and Levium into 8 groups, known as Mishmaros. Each Mishmar performed all the services of the Mishkan for 1 complete week, after which it was relieved by the next Mishmar. Moshe's system was maintained until the time of David, who instituted 24 rotating Mishmarot. Our Parsha discusses only one of the numerous responsibilities of the Levium, carrying the Mishkan and its holy vessels, while the Jews traveled in the desert. Each of the 3 Levite families had its own transportation assignments, and one family was not permitted to switch with the next. Kehat. The family of Kehat was appointed porters of the Aaron and the holy vessels of the Mishkan, as will be explained in detail at the end of this Parsha. Gershon woven materials, that is, the curtains and screens. Their task is the family of Gershon transported the Mishkan's cust in Parshas Naso. Merari. The family of Merari carried the boards, bolts, and sockets. Their task is explained in Parshas Naso. How the Mishkan's holy vessels were prepared for a journey. Before a journey, each of the Mishkan's holy vessels was wrapped in 2 coverings. The standard covering consisted of a tekailes, blue woolen cloth, to represent the Shekinah which rested upon the vessels, and a second protective layer of takash hide. The following vessels required a different kind of covering: the shulchan, the mizbach ha'olah, exterior altar, and the aron. The shulchan. The 12 loaves of lechem hapanim were never removed from the table. The shulchan with the showbread was first draped by a blue cloth. Then the shulchan's accessories, its dishes, spoons, and bowls, were placed upon the blue cloth and covered with an outer layer of argaman, crimson wool. Finally, everything was enveloped by a covering of takash hide. Mizbach ha'olah. Under the outer takash hide, this altar was covered with an argaman, crimson cloth. The crimson color intimated that because of the korbanos that were offered on the altar, the Jews were spared from suffering for their sins. The fire on the altar was not extinguished before a journey. The Kohanim inverted a large copper pot over the fire before wrapping the altar with the cloth, so that the fire would not burn the cloth, the Aaron. The procedure of covering the Aaron was different from the other vessels. It will be explained in the next section. The menorah. After being covered with a blue cloth, the menorah was placed in a large sack of takash hide. The sack was then tied to a pole, since the menorah did not possess its own poles. Hashem warned that no one was permitted to gaze at any of the holy vessels while they were covered. Peering at the area, the holies of the vessels might result in the onlooker's death. Why did Hashem forbid glancing at the holy vessels while they were being prepared for a journey? The degree of respect that someone or something elicits is often determined by its external appearance. For example, a stranger dressed in imposing apparel will initially impress others as an important person. Conversely, a distinguished person in common garb will demean himself in the eyes of others. Seeing the holy vessels in a state of preparation for a journey might tend to lower the respect in which the onlooker had previously held them. This prohibition derives from Kabbalistic concepts beyond our grasp. When the Aron was located in the Kodesh HaKodashim, the Shekinah upon it manifested itself in a certain form. When the ark was removed from there, the accompanying Shekinah appeared differently. It was therefore not permissible to look at the Aron when it was removed from its proper place in the Holy of Holies. Originally, Hashem entrusted the Leviim with the task of covering all the holy vessels. However, some Leviim could not resist glancing at the Aron because they longed to see the Shekinah. They died immediately. Hashem therefore commanded that the Kohanim, rather than the Leviim, prepare the holy vessels for travel. The Kohanim were preferred for this task because they were conscientious in all their duties. They could be relied upon to control their desire to glance at the holy vessels. Even if a Kohen forgot himself and did look at the Aron, he might be spared from death because of his elevated level of wholeness. Before each journey, the Kohanim would wrap all the holy vessels in their coverings. Thereafter, they summoned the Levite family of Kehat. Each member of the children of Kehat approached the vessel he had been assigned to carry, and the Kohanim adjusted the poles on his shoulders. The special laws of preparing the holy ark for a journey, and how it miraculously transported itself before each journey. The Aron was covered with the paraket, dividing curtain in front of the Holy of Holies. Since the Kohanim were afraid that they might be tempted to look at the Aron if they stood on ladders to remove the paraket, they devised an unusual method to unhook it. By means of long poles, they removed the paraket from the hooks that attached it to the pillars, and then carefully lowered it until it completely covered the Aron without exposing the ark to view. Then they spread a second blue cloth over it. No other vessel was covered with a blue cloth from the outside, but this was done to the Aron to draw notice to its special kedusha. This holiest of vessels corresponded to the Kisei HaKavod, heavenly throne of glory. The blue cloth would remind the onlooker of its significance. The ceremony of transporting the Aron was special too. The Aron's 4 carriers were required to march facing it. Therefore, the 2 front carriers walked backwards. While transporting the Aron, the children of Kehat sang Shira to Hashem, similar to the angels who sing to Hashem because they are close to the Shekinah. A wonderful miracle occurred as the bearers of the Aron seized its poles. Not only was it apparently weightless, but its carriers were themselves lifted up and carried along. This miracle was openly demonstrated when the children of Israel, under Yehoshua's leadership, reached the Jordan on the 10th of Nisan. It was springtime and the Jordan was overflowing its banks. Yehoshua told the people, Hashem will now perform a miracle which will clearly demonstrate that he is in your midst. It will help convince you that he will expel the nations from Eretz Canaan. Yehoshua commanded the Kohanim, who on this special occasion carried the Aron instead of the Leviim, to step into the waters of the Jordan. At the point where the Kohanim dipped their feet into the river, the downstream current suddenly came to a halt, piling up into a wall that rose to gigantic heights. Since the water below the Kohanim's position continued flowing downward, the Kohanim found themselves standing on a dry riverbed. Yehoshua commanded the entire population to cross the Jordan, while the Kohanim with the Aron remained in their positions. After the people had traveled across, Yehoshua told the Kohanim to step back onto the eastern bank. As soon as this was done, the wall broke, and the waters gushed downstream. The Kohanim, bearers of the Aron, were now separated from their brethren, who stood on the west bank of the river. The Aron then miraculously lifted the Kohanim across the water to the children of Israel. On this occasion, it was obvious to all that the Aron carried its carriers. It did this all the time. In the time of King David, a man by the name of Uzzah was executed by heaven for taking hold of the Aron when he noticed that the oxen were about to shake it off the wagon. Turturn Shmuel. Hashem said, "The Aron bears even its bearers. You should have trusted that it can certainly support itself." Hashem asked that 4 acts which he himself performs in a far superior manner than we do, be done in the sanctuary. He commanded that the children of Kehat to carry his Aron, although he upholds the entire universe. He commanded the Kohanim and Leviim to guard the Mishkan, although he is the guardian of the world. He commanded that a menorah be kindled in the sanctuary, although he illuminates the world. He ordered that sacrifices be brought onto his altar, although he feeds and sustains all creatures. The above illustrate that Hashem issued all the mitzvos in order to elevate us spiritually in this world and in the next. The children of Kehat are counted to be selected for the avodah. Of the 3 Levite families, Gershon, Kehat, and Merari, the family of Kehat was given the task of carrying the holiest vessels. They transported the Aaron, the paraket, the menorah, the shulchan, the altars, and all their accessories. These holy vessels were to be carried on their shoulders. In contrast, the other Levite families were permitted to load their burdens on wagons. Hashem commanded Moshe to count the family of Kehat as the first Levite family and to assign them their tasks. This census ascertained the number of Leviim eligible to perform the avodah. Therefore, only men between 30 and 50, the years a Levi served in the Mishkan, were counted. Eleazar, the 3rd son of Aharon, was appointed overseer of the children of Kehat. He handed out assignments and determined who would carry each holy vessel during a journey. Eleazar himself transported the following: oil for lighting the menorah in his right hand, the ketores in his left, flour for the daily tamid sacrifice in a container suspended from his arm, and a little flask of shemen hamishka in his belt. Inevitably, before each departure, members of Kehat began arguing among themselves over who would have the privilege of bearing the Aaron. Although well aware that many of their brothers had lost their lives because of some slight irreverence toward the ark, they nevertheless considered it a supreme honor to carry this holiest of vessels. As each one was assigned his task by Eleazar, he clamored, "Let me carry the Aaron rather than the shulchan, the menorah, or another vessel." In order to avoid this constant contention, Hashem commanded Moshe and Aharon, "Appoint permanent carriers for the Aaron, rather than allotting this task to different people before each journey. With your Ruach HaKodesh, Moshe and Aharon, discern which of the children of Kehat are worthy to bear the Aaron. Choose the holiest of the family, men who will not be harmed by the Aaron's great holiness." Hashem concluded with a stern warning to all Kohanim not to summon the children of Kehat to their duty of carrying the holy vessels until the vessels were fully covered. If the children of Kehat peered at the holy vessels or touched them while they were exposed, they might perish. "Is this fair?" Moshe asked Hashem. "Are you worried only that the children of Kehat be spared from death? Don't you care about the Kohanim, who wrap up the holy vessels?" "The Kohanim will not die from looking at them," Hashem assured Moshe. "The Kohanim are Kodesh Kodeshim, holy of holies. Therefore, exposure to the vessels, which are also Kodesh Kodeshim, will not harm them. However, the children of Kehat are less holy than the Kohanim, and so looking at the holy vessels will cause them injury." Thank you for joining this week's journey through the Midrash. If you enjoyed this story, don't keep it to yourself. Share this channel with someone. Please hit the like, share, and subscribe button for the next story. See you next week on the Midrash Says Out Loud.